You get a paper cut or breathe in a stray droplet on the subway. To you, it's a minor annoyance. Inside your tissues, the landscape is violently ripped open, and a swarm of microscopic alien lifeforms pours in to consume your resources. Your first line of defense arrives in seconds. Macrophages are massive cells, the size of black rhinos compared to the invaders. They stretch out long, octopus-like arms and swallow the bacteria. They are quickly joined by hundreds of thousands of neutrophils. These are intense, short-lived warriors that vomit toxic chemicals at the bacteria. Some even push a genetic suicide button, detonating their own DNA to cast a toxic net that traps the enemy. The problem is the brutal math of the invasion. Bacteria can double their population in minutes. They rapidly consume the area's nutrients, and soon the macrophages and neutrophils are exhausted from the sheer volume of killing. You don't feel these millions of cellular deaths. But if this front line collapses, the infection will spread to your vital organs and your body will die. To survive, your immune system has to drastically escalate the war. Suddenly, you start to shiver, your muscles ache, and your skin cools down while your insides start burning up. Naturally, you head to the medicine cabinet and reach for a pill. We tend to look at these physical symptoms and assume the disease is winning. We treat the heat like a biological malfunction that needs to be fixed. But this heat is a deliberate, highly orchestrated response. Your immune system is actively deploying its most devastating weapon. By trying to numb a few hours of discomfort, you are actively sabotaging a defense mechanism that has kept mammals alive for hundreds of millions of years. It starts with chemical signals called pyrogens, or the creators of heat. They drift away from the battlefield and travel straight up to your brain. Once there, they hijack your hypothalamus and crank up your thermostat. To meet this U-target, skeletal muscles contract rapidly to generate heat. At the same time, surface blood vessels constrict to prevent warmth escaping. This shift requires a massive amount of fuel. You burn roughly 10% more calories for every single degree centigrade your core temperature rises. This tactic is so deeply embedded in our biology that even cold-blooded animals use it. When they get sick, lizards have to manually trigger their fevers by finding a hot rock and basking in the sun. Your body is willingly putting itself through immense physical and energetic stress. It endures this to rewrite the environmental laws of physics within its own tissues. For the bacteria, a pleasant, resource-rich environment suddenly turns into a hellscape. The intense heat causes their organs to break down. Their membranes bubble and burst, and their DNA takes direct damage. Simultaneously, your immune system initiates a siege. It strips critical resources like iron and glucose out of your bloodstream, leaving the desperate, overheating invaders stranded in a food desert. Viruses hiding inside your own cells are faring just as poorly. As the heat damages their internal machinery, the super-stressed infected cells panic. To keep from dying, they rapidly produce tiny repair structures called heat shock proteins. But this is a deadly trap. These proteins act like a radar ping. Natural killer cells scan for this exact distress signal, locking on and executing the overstressed cell immediately. Fever burns the pathogens on the outside and turns the survival instincts of the viruses on the inside into a beacon for their own execution. While the heat breaks the invaders apart, your own immune cells experience the exact opposite effect. The heat wakes them up. Sluggish macrophages suddenly vibrate with energy, moving faster and devouring enemies with extreme aggression. This bought time allows your intelligence officers, the dendritic cells, to navigate your lymphatic superhighway. They search through billions of helper T cells to find the exact one that holds the biological weapon for this specific enemy. Once that match is made, your heavy artillery awakens. B cells begin cloning themselves, pumping out 2,000 highly targeted antibodies every single second. These antibodies saturate the battlefield. They latch on to the desperate bacteria, clumping them together into defenseless masses, so your infantry can easily sweep through and wipe them out. Fever provides the exact environmental conditions required to deploy your immune system's most sophisticated and targeted heavy artillery. This raises an interesting question. If fever has been around for 600 million years, why haven't viruses and bacteria simply evolved to survive the heat? This chart shows why. If a pathogen's reproduction rate adapts to peak at 104 degrees, it faces a problem infecting a new host. At a healthy 98.6 degrees, the new host is simply too cold for the heat-adapted pathogen to survive. To get around this, the most serious pathogens, like measles or chickenpox, use hit-and-run tactics. They replicate incredibly fast and are most infectious right before your fever ever hits. Fever creates an inescapable checkmate. By temporarily turning your body into an extreme environment, it makes it biologically impossible for diseases to permanently adapt to the human baseline. So, back to that pill in your medicine cabinet. Walking into a pharmacy and buying cheap over-the-counter fever medication is a recent luxury in human history. We've just gotten used to stopping pain the second we feel it. There are absolute medical boundaries here. If a fever surpasses 104 degrees Fahrenheit, your internal heat monitor is failing and you need intervention. The same goes for vulnerable patients facing severe, life-threatening diseases, where the physical stress is simply too much to bear. But for a normal, mild fever, the trade-off is clear. Taking a pill will indeed make you feel better in the short term, but you are cooling the battlefield down. You sacrifice the efficiency of your immune system and prolong the fight for a little comfort. The next time you are lying in bed, shivering and aching, remember that you are a hostile world, executing a flawless and cinematic campaign to boil your enemies alive.